Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to wait a couple of more seconds. We have some people that are joining, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Appreciate you being here this afternoon. Hi, everyone. I said it just a few seconds ago, but I saw some more people joining. We're going to just give it a couple minutes for everybody to join on, and then we'll go ahead and get going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like it's slowed down, so I will go ahead and get us started. Welcome, everyone. This is the Warehouse Working Group Orientation Meeting, just to make sure you're in the right room. The first thing I'd like to do right off the bat is to introduce our interpreters, Amelia Hernandez and Vicki Lundberg, who will be providing some brief instructions before we get started on how to use the interpretation feature. Vicki, Amelia?
Yes. I'll give these instructions first in Spanish and then I'll switch to English. Bienvenidos a todos y muchas gracias por acompañarnos hoy en eso es la reunión de orientación del grupo de trabajo de almacenes, el WWG. Si están utilizando su computadora portátil o computadora de escritorio, favor de localizar el icono con figura de globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla cuando este aparezca en un minuto y luego pulsen en Interpretación de lenguaje, Language Interpretation, y seleccionen el idioma español. Si están sintonizándonos desde su teléfono, iPad o dispositivo similar, busquen el menú con los tres puntitos en la esquina superior del lado derecho de su pantalla y pulsen Interpretación de lenguaje y luego el español. Esto permite que escuchen la traducción al español con un 80% de volumen y el audio en inglés se escuchará al fondo con un 20% de volumen. Tienen la opción de apagar el audio en inglés pulsando Mute Original Audio, ubicado en el mismo menú donde eligieron el idioma español. Gracias. If you are ahora voy a darlos en inglés. If you are an English speaker, the interpreter is unsure if there's going to be any presentations or comments in Spanish, but unless you're fully bilingual, you would then want to choose the English channel so that you can hear anything that's spoken in Spanish translated to the English channel. If you're using a laptop or a desktop, please look for the globe figure at the bottom of your screen when it shows up in a few moments, and then click on Interpretation, Language Interpretation, and select English. If you're connecting from a telephone, an iPad, or other similar device, look for the three dots on the top right of your screen when that shows up in a few moments, and also click on Language Interpretation and then English, and that will permit that you can hear anything translated from Spanish onto the English channel. This concludes the instructions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Vicki. And I believe the interpretation button just popped up, so go ahead and select that right now if you can. And now I'd like to turn this over to our APCD Deputy Director, Mike Watt. He'll be providing some brief introductory remarks before we go ahead and get started with our larger presentation. So, Mike?
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. Again, my name is Mike Watt. I'm one of the deputy directors here at APCD, and just want to start by thanking everybody for taking the time today to participate in our discussion. We're looking forward to some fruitful meetings over the course of the next couple months with this group. Wanted to just kind of let everybody know what the intent of the meeting today is. Really what we're trying to accomplish today is provide some background information about indirect source emissions associated with warehouses and distribution centers, and why the district is looking into strategies to try to regulate some of these emissions, and what we can do, what we hope to achieve through these working group discussions. The ultimate goal from today's meeting is really to ensure that everybody has that foundation of knowledge, because various folks may have been involved in some of the discussions that we've had previously up to this point. This may be a new subject matter for some of the folks that are participating in this call. So really the outcome today is to hopefully get everybody with that foundational knowledge, so that we can have some more robust discussions, in our subsequent working groups. And when we really get into the kind of meat of, some of the different regulatory and non-regulatory strategies that we'll be discussing and getting some feedback on, that everybody's at least got this kind of foundational knowledge to help support those activities. So really looking forward to taking advantage of the collective experience of the entire group as we kind of look at exploring what sort of viable strategies might exist to reduce air pollution and public health impacts from this sector. So excited for this orientation meeting, and look forward to the discussions that we're going to have over the next couple months. So I'll turn it back over to Nick, and him and the team will get us going for the rest of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Mike. Now I'd just like to take a few minutes for APCD staff to introduce themselves. And then we'll go around the room here. We do have 2 hours, so we have a good amount of time to get into, to kind of figure out who's here and understand where everybody is coming from, what their background is, what community they represent, and just to be able to better understand what they're hoping to get out of this warehouse working group. So I will go ahead and get started, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues at APCD to introduce themselves, and then I'll probably just go down the list as I see it, the participant list. And if you could just provide your name and background and your affiliation, just very briefly, so we can understand who's in the room and joining us today. Again, my name is Nick Cormier. I'm the Rural Development Supervisor here at APCD, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Randy.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Consolation, Associate Engineer in Rural Development.
Hi, team. I'm Kathy Kean. I'm the Chief of our Emission Reduction Strategies team here at the district. I'm doing screen share, so I'm not on camera at the moment. Pray for me, technology. I'll pass it over to Janet.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janet McHugh. I'm the Admin Analyst for Rural Development.
And I think you all met Mike Watt already.
Yep. Sorry, Mike Watt, Deputy Director.
No problem. I don't know if there's other APCD staff on the line that want to introduce themselves, but I'll go ahead and be quiet if anybody does.
My name is Vera Tiagi, and I'm the Senior Deputy County Counsel for the APCD.
Great.
Hey, I'll just introduce myself too. My name's Tim Wolf, and I'm representing compliance here for the meeting.
Great, thank you all. Any other APCD staff? Okay, just wanted to check. So I'm gonna just go ahead and go down the list. If you can't unmute yourself, that's fine. Just let us know. But I'm just gonna go down the list alphabetically. So if AJ Estrada.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is AJ Estrada. I am the Political Director for the San Diego Building and Construction Trades Council. I appreciate being here and looking forward to the start of this orientation meeting.
Thank you. Sharon Cloward.
Hello, everyone. Sharon Cloward. I'm president of the San Diego Working Waterfront, formerly called the San Diego Port Tenants Association.
Thank you. Alejandra Miriteran.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Alejandra Miriteran. I'm the Executive Director of the Otay Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. Alejandro Amador.
Hello, everybody. Alejandro Amador, Environmental Justice Manager at Casa Familiar.
Thank you. Andre Freeman.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. This is Andre Freeman from the California Air Resources Board. I'm the manager of our freight policy section and focus on a lot of our freight regulatory activities.
Great, thank you. Angelica Carrasco.
Hi, everyone. Angelica Carrasco. I'm also with the California Air Resources Board. I'm an air pollution specialist in the South Coast Air Quality Planning section.
Great, thank you. And if I butcher your name, I apologize. I'm doing the best as I read them. So, Ariel Fiddleday.
Hey everyone, yeah, I'm Ariel Fiddledye. I am the manager of our South Coast Air Quality Planning section here at CAR, but really we work with San Diego and other districts in the Southern California region on state implementation plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Benedetto.
Hi, Craig Benedetto. I'm the policy director for NAIOP San Diego, the Commercial Real Estate Development Association.
Thank you. Christina Marquez.
Hello, Christina Marquez. I'm the environmental organizer for IBEW Local 569, the Electrical Workers Union. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you. Let's see, Dr. Maddie Swain.
Hi, everybody. Maddie Swain, Assistant Professor of City Planning at San Diego State University. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Eric Bruvold.
Hi, Eric Bruvold, CEO of the San Diego North Economic Development Council.
Great, thank you. Frank Plant.
Hi, everybody. Frank Plant. I'm with Harborside in San Diego. We're a third-party warehousing company and a member of the San Diego Working Waterfront.
Great, thank you for joining. Let's see. Sorry, it's jumping around a little bit as I'm reading it. Greg Gelani.
Hello, everybody. Greg Gelani with CARB's Freight Policy Team. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Munger.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. This is Jack Munger with the Industrial Environmental Association.
Thank you. Caitlin Arduino. Hopefully I said that right. Caitlin Arduino.
Sorry, I was talking on mute. Yes, Caitlin Arduino, Murphy Development Company, been in Otay Mesa for almost 40 years, developing industrial. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine Ostebuck.
Hi, yes, thank you. Catherine Ostebuck with Navy Region Southwest. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Let's see, Lauren Cazares.
Hi, I'm Lauren Casares with the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Maritza Garcia.
Hi, everyone. Marisa Garcia. I am Junior Policy Advocate for Logan Heights with the Environmental Health Coalition. I'm also part of the AB 617 Steering Committee and a lifelong Logan resident. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Massey Hatch.
Good afternoon, Massey Hatch with MS Hatch Consulting and also Industrial Environmental Association, IEA.
Thank you. Michelle Guyron.
Michelle Jerome. I work at the Port of San Diego as a senior environmental specialist.
Apologies for butchering your name, Michelle.
No problem.
Let's see. Miguel Angel Zavala Perez.
Hi, everyone. Miguel Zavala. I'm from San Diego State University, associate professor in the School of Public Health, in the Environmental Health Division. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mike Williams.
Hi, Mike Williams here with the International Warehouse Logistics Association. Pleasure to be on the call.
Thank you. Nathaniel Tate.
Yes, good afternoon. Nathaniel Tate with Center on Policy Initiatives. I'm an organizer dealing with warehouse workers and then also just warehouse policy. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Nicholas Paul.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, Nicolas Paul, Air Quality Advocate with the Environmental Health Coalition.
Thank you. Let's see, Rob Swanson.
Hi, I'm Rob Swanson. I'm a Deputy Attorney General with the California Attorney General's Office in the Environment section.
Thank you. Sam Peterson.
Sam Peterson, I'm an environmental compliance specialist with the University of California, San Diego.
Thank you. Sarah Marsh.
Hi, Sarah Marsh. I'm with Dole Fresh Fruit, also a member of the San Diego Working Waterfront Group. We have a location at 10th Avenue Marine Terminal.
Great, thank you. Serena Pelka.
Hi all, Serena Pelka here with Climate Action Campaign Policy Advocate.
Thank you. Sophie Silvestri.
Good afternoon, Sophie Silvestri representing Pasha Automotive Services. We are the terminal operator for the National City Marine Terminal. It's an automotive terminal. We're a port processor. Thank you.
Thank you. Sterling Ross.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Sterling Ross. I'm now with SDG&E, Air Quality Specialist, formerly of the San Diego APCD for 15 years. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you, Sterling. Tim Garrett.
Good afternoon, Tim Garrett with the San Diego Association of Governments, or SANDAG, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the region. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think that's all I have on my list, but I'm going to do one more check. If there's anybody I missed through that, you're welcome to speak up at this point to introduce yourself.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Amy Fawcett. I'm Policy Advisor for the San Diego Working Waterfront.
Yes, we can hear you, and thank you. Okay, everybody introduce themselves. Sounds like we have a very wide swath of people on the line, so that's good. That's what we were hoping to see. So I appreciate everybody's time and efforts for being here today. And I wanted to just go ahead and get into our slides at this point. So I will go ahead and turn things over to Randy Constellation, who will be starting off the presentation today, and we'll be kind of tag teaming throughout. We're going to be doing a presentation maybe for about a half an hour or so, and then we're going to open up the room to comment and questions, and we'll have some kind of points to kind of guide the discussion at that point. So you're welcome to put any questions in relation to what we're talking about in the chat so we can go back to it. Otherwise, we can address any questions at the end of the presentation as well, and we can go ahead and have a dialogue. So I will go ahead and turn things over to Randy. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we begin, we have a few meeting announcements. Please silence your cell or desk phone to avoid feedback or interference. Everyone except the presenter will be muted unless called on by the host. Please save your questions and comments until the end of the presentation. And for those, just for your knowledge, this meeting will be recorded and posted on the district's YouTube page following today's meeting. Next slide, please. To ensure the meetings are effective and inclusive, all members agree to recognize and adhere to the following meeting rules and guidelines of participation. Please create space for everyone to contribute. Only one person speaks at a time. Listen to each other, respect each other's opinions, knowledge, and perspectives, and be conscious of time constraints, which we'll go over at the end of the presentation. Also, meetings will be moderated either by district staff or a professional, impartial facilitator. Next slide, please. This is an overview of what will be covered in today's presentation. Background information on air quality and indirect sources, direction from the governing board for the district, warehouse working group expectations, stakeholder input, potential meeting topics, format of the meetings, and scheduling of the kickoff meeting in November. Next slide, please. Before we continue, we have a quick poll question for all of you. What would you consider your level of knowledge about air pollution in San Diego County? Nothing, a little, a lot, or I'm an expert. Note that all responses to this poll and other poll questions presented today are anonymous. So please enter your selection now.
I think we can go ahead and close the poll at this point. Looks like most everybody has.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your responses. Looks like we have kind of a mix of experience here. The most being a lot, which is good to hear. A little is kind of what in third place, followed by I'm an expert, and then for those that are not familiar with what we air pollution in San Diego. Okay, well, thank you again. Next slide, please. The district will be evaluating two types of pollutants from indirect sources: nitrogen oxides, NOx, and diesel particulate matter, or DPM. When NOx and volatile organic compounds, VOC, are emitted by different types of sources, such as vehicles or off-road equipment, they chemically react under the influence of sunlight and heat to form ozone pollution. The concentration of ozone pollution is as dependent on the sunshine and temperature as it is on the presence of ozone-forming emissions. This ozone is harmful to breathe and therefore is regulated as an air pollutant. Next slide, please. Particulate matter, PM, is a complex mixture of solids and liquids that are 10 microns or less, PM10, or 2.5 microns or less in diameter, PM2.5. This means PM2.5 makes up a portion of PM10. PM gets into the lungs and can induce adverse health effects. Finer particulates travel deeper into your lungs and respiratory system. Diesel particulate matter, DPM, is the solid material in diesel exhaust. More than 90% of DPM is less than 1 micron in diameter and thus is a subset of PM2.5. 70% of the total known cancer risk related to air toxics in California is due to DPM. Next slide, please. To gauge the region's progress, measurements of ambient air quality, including ozone levels, are continuously collected at 7 sites throughout the region pursuant to federal requirements. The resulting data indicate that San Diego County has achieved a reduction or improvement in the ozone design value between 2001 and 2022. The graph illustrates the long-term decline in ozone pollution levels. However, there is clearly more work to do to achieve federal ozone targets. Notwithstanding the historical trend of declining ozone levels, it is not uncommon to observe ozone upticks in some years due to year-to-year changes in weather conditions that impact ozone formation, such as daily temperatures, relative humidity, and wind speed, rather than to emissions, which have steadily decreased year after year. Next slide, please. This chart shows the steady decline in regional DPM emissions in tons per day over the last 2 decades, largely due to the requirements of various CARB regulations of diesel engines and fuels. Unlike the previous slide for ozone, currently there are no federal or state air quality standards for DPM. DPM levels are expected to continue to declining as additional controls are adopted and the number of new technology vehicles increases. Although progress has been made in reducing exposure to diesel exhaust still poses substantial risks to public health and the environment. Next slide, please. County-wide census tracts with ozone percentiles above 50% can be seen in this map. These census tract locations align well with the historical district air monitoring trends for the areas, demonstrating higher ozone formation in the inland foothills and valleys of San Diego County compared to the coastline. No census tracts in the portside or international border communities met this threshold. However, Many inland locations, such as El Cajon and Escondido, are above the 50% percentile for ozone. Next slide, please. Countywide census tracts with DPM percentiles can be seen in this map. Most major sources of diesel emissions, such as ships, trains, and trucks, operate in and around ports, rail yards, and heavily traveled roadways. These areas are often located near highly populated areas. Because of this, elevated DPM levels are mainly an urban problem, with large numbers of people exposed to higher DPM concentrations, resulting in greater health consequences compared to rural areas. At this point, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Nick Cormier, who will talk about air quality in some local areas. Nick, next slide, please.
Thank you, Randy. The California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or WEHA, created the CalEnviroScreen, or CES, tool in 2013 to evaluate the burden of pollution from multiple sources in communities across California, while accounting for potential vulnerability to the adverse effects of pollution of all types, such as air, water, and other factors. The tool ranks census tracts in California based on potential exposures to pollutants, adverse environmental conditions, socioeconomic factors, and the prevalence of certain health conditions. The census tracts denoted in red on the map are officially designated as disadvantaged communities statewide using CES 4.0. These areas represent the 25% highest scoring census tracts in CES 4.0. Census tracts previously identified in the top 25% in CES 3.0. Census tracts with high amounts of pollution and low populations, and federally recognized tribal areas. These include neighborhoods in the Portside community, parts of Chula Vista, communities around the Interstate 15, Interstate 805, State Highway 94 corridors, as well as East El Cajon and parts of San Ysidro. Next slide, please. This map zooms into the southwest corner of the previous map and highlights the disadvantaged census tracts located within the Portside and International Border communities. Based on the CES scores in these areas, the Portside and International Border communities each experience disproportionate burdens from exposure to air pollutants. Next slide, please. In 2018, the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, recognized the Portside Environmental Justice Neighborhoods in San Diego County as one of the 10 initial areas statewide to be prioritized in the state's Community Air Protection Program, or CAP. Portside is comprised of several neighborhoods, including Barrio Logan, West National City, Logan Heights, and Sherman Heights, with approximately 53,000 residents. The community is impacted by a mix of emission sources, including operations from the nearby Port of San Diego, on-road and off-road freight, rail, and other industrial businesses. Of greatest concern is diesel particulate matter, or DPM, which is a known carcinogen and the greatest toxic air pollutant risk in San Diego County. Of the 53,000 residents living in Portside, over 45,000 have a DPM exposure risk greater than 95% of other areas in California, per CalEnviroScreen. Next slide, please. In 2021, CARB selected the International Border community of Otay Mesa and San Ysidro to be recognized for inclusion in the state's CAP. The communities of Otay Mesa and San Ysidro experience disproportionate levels of air pollution given their geographic location along the international border with Mexico. The community has approximately 64,000 people and is home to 2 international ports of entry: San Ysidro, which is the busiest land crossing in the Western Hemisphere, and Otay Mesa, which is the busiest heavy-duty truck crossing in California. The district has recently formed a Community Steering Committee, or CSC, and is now actively working to develop a monitoring plan and community emissions reduction plan, or CERP, with the goal of further reducing pollution and community exposure throughout the international border community. Next slide, please. Heavy-duty diesel trucks are the largest contributor to the indirect source emissions associated with warehouses and distribution centers. The widespread emergence of online purchasing and rapid delivery services is contributing to a strong demand for warehouse space near populated areas, heightening concerns over the potential impacts on air quality and public health. These concerns emphasize the need for actions to help minimize the public health impacts caused by freight operations in our region. Next slide, please. The Clean Air Act defines an indirect source as a facility, building, structure, installation, real property, road, or highway which attracts or may attract mobile sources of pollution. Assembly Bill 423 directed the district to consider adopting an indirect source rule to address air pollution from mobile sources that are associated with stationary sources, such as ports, warehouses, and distribution centers. Next slide, please. Indirect sources of air pollution primarily emit two types of pollutants: NOx, which is a precursor to ground level ozone, and DPM. NOx and DPM are emitted from different types of sources, but most notably from mobile sources such as on-road and off-road vehicles. Elevated exposure to both pollutants can cause many respiratory and cardiovascular symptoms, the most common of which are listed on this slide and are a public health concern. Next slide, please. This map shows the locations of the approximately 6,700 warehouses located throughout San Diego County, ranging in size from less than 1,000 to 3.3 million square feet. It's important to note that not all of these warehouses may be involved in activities that result in indirect source emissions, something the district would need to further refine as part of the emission reduction strategy development process. In total, indirect source emissions from all warehouses in the region is estimated to be around 1,100 tons per year of NOx and 11 tons per year of DPM. The district calculated these totals using similar methodologies as the South Coast Air Quality Management District, which were scaled as needed to reflect conditions in San Diego County. This includes average truck trip rates, which were calculated in proportion to square footage, meaning larger facilities were assumed to generate more truck trips than smaller facilities. The total indirect source emissions from warehouses equates to approximately 4% of the countywide inventories for both NOx and DPM. Next slide, please. District staff has been working to evaluate the feasibility of various actions to address indirect sources of pollution, particularly warehouses, distribution centers, and ports. Staff began reviewing rules from other air districts and then conducted meetings with stakeholders and subject matter experts to determine what sort of actions could be feasible for the region. To date, district staff has conducted 70 meetings with various stakeholders, including community groups, warehouse owners, other jurisdictions, and other internal district divisions. For the June 2023 Governing Board meeting, staff prepared a report entitled Options and Considerations for Reducing Indirect Source Emissions at Warehouses, Distribution Centers, and Ports. The report provided an update on staff's research and evaluation of the district's legal authority to regulate indirect sources, other California Air District's indirect source rules, warehouse inventory in San Diego County, an overview of the possible rule development process, and ongoing activities associated with a potential Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Port of San Diego. Next slide, please. The board approved staff's June 2023 recommendation, requested action 1A, which was to convene a working group of community and industry stakeholders. The working group will provide an input on possible regulatory and non-regulatory strategies that could further reduce indirect source emissions from warehouses and distribution centers in San Diego County. The working group will serve as a more structured platform than the individual stakeholder meetings held to date, to bring relevant parties together to discuss potential regulatory and alternative strategies, which may include incentive programs focused on smaller warehouses impacting sensitive land uses, and exploring possible land use measures with other jurisdictional partners. While the working group explores these alternatives, district staff will continue to track the South Coast Air Quality Management District litigation to ensure that the outcome is accounted for in any possible regulatory approach pursued locally. The board also directed staff to prioritize under-resourced communities, consider warehouses smaller than 100,000 square feet in size, and update the board at its next meeting on October 12th with a proposed timeline for action and composition of the working group. Next slide, please. So here's another group poll for all of you to respond to. Reminder that your responses are anonymous. The question is, on a scale from 1 to 5, how familiar were you with indirect sources of air pollution before this meeting? 1 would be not at all, you've never heard of it. 2 would be you've heard of it before, but you don't really know anything about it. 3 would be you're familiar with it and you know a little bit about it. 4 would be you're very familiar with it, but you may not be an expert on the topic. And 5 would be you're an expert. So we'll go ahead and have the question pop up and we'll give it a few seconds for everybody to respond. Once again, just feel free to, these responses are anonymous. We're just trying to get a sense for who knows what level of knowledge we have in the
Nick?
Meeting right now. Yes.
So on mine, it shows a poll with multiple questions on it and it won't let me submit unless I answer all of them. The other questions have to do with meetings and availability and things like that. Did I miss your direction on that?
Same here for me. Same here is happening to me, Sharon.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's a question that's coming. So there should be just one question showing at the moment. Let's see. Oh no. Oh, I see what you're actually, I see. Is everyone seeing the same thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. And it won't let you submit.
Days.
Okay.
Let me end the poll and maybe try relaunching again.
Okay. We'll try that.
Do that. What does everyone see now?
Same thing.
I think it's the same. Yeah, I
And
think I
it
see
didn't
what
happen
it's
with the
saying.
first question though, right?
No.
Okay.
Okay, maybe everybody wants to answer. So everyone sees all of the questions? Is that the case?
Yeah, I think it's showing, like, if you scroll down on the results or on the question, it seems like there's a question 2, 3, and 4, which is asking for kind of just a miscellaneous choices. I hope I'm seeing what everybody else is seeing, but
Yeah, that's correct.
okay.
It just says
And-
choice 1 and choice 2.
Yeah, I would probably disregard the questions 2, 3, and 4 for now. Those are, I think, questions that are coming in a few slides. So go ahead and just put in whatever for 2, 3, and 4. Really what we're trying to figure out is just everyone's knowledge on the first question. I apologize
Yeah.
for that.
The thing is, Nick, it won't let you do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe
Oh,
we
really?
can submit
Okay.
something for, can we submit something for all of them and you just read question number 1?
read the responses for that one?
Yeah.
So that we, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and respond the best you can, I guess, and we'll get this figured out more in future meetings. But I appreciate everyone's patience on this. We'll go ahead and let's go ahead and end the poll, Janet.
Okay.
And share.
Do you want
We'll
to share
share
the
what we
result
have.
we have? Okay.
Yeah, we'll share what we have, and then so if everyone can't see this, but I'll go ahead and read it. So on a scale of 1 to 5, it looks like about half the room is very familiar, but not an expert. So that's number 4. About 56% of us. And then coming in second is people are familiar, but know a little bit about it. So 32% responded to number 3. And then about 8% in the room believe they are an expert. So that's great. We're going to be relying on your knowledge. And then and number 2 at 4% was they've heard of it before but don't know anything about it. So that's good. It's actually encouraging that we have a lot of people that have heard of this topic and are interested. So we appreciate that. So we'll go ahead and close that poll, and then we'll go into the next slide. Oh, actually, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation over to Randy again, who will go through the proposed purpose statement and timeline. So Randy.
Thank you, Nick. The following is an overview of the Warehouse Working Group purpose statement, which outlines the proposed framework of the WWG and its meetings. Purpose: to offer input to the district regarding potential regulatory and non-regulatory strategies to reduce air pollution and public health impacts from heavy-duty trucks and other indirect sources associated with warehouses and distribution centers in the San Diego region, with priority to those facilities in under-resourced communities and/or near sensitive receptor land uses. Line of reporting. If the WWG can agree on a strategy, the WWG may make recommendations to district staff and the Planning and Policy Committee of the board. The Planning and Policy Committee or district staff may report those recommendations to the board. Responsibilities. Members will be expected to regularly participate in WWG meetings, review meeting materials provided by the district, and share information and provide feedback based on their respective areas of expertise. Meeting information. Meetings will be held virtually via Zoom and administered by district staff. Links to meeting materials will be made available on a new dedicated web page on the district's website. Duration of existence. The WWG will function on an ongoing basis, subject to annual review by the district. Note that this proposed purpose statement is subject to change pending board comments. Next slide, please. The following is a summary of the proposed timeline for the warehouse indirect source emissions reduction strategy. The official kickoff WWG meeting will be held in November. A meeting poll will be discussed near the end of today's presentation. Meetings will be conducted each month, July to December 2024. Based on input obtained during these meetings, the district will develop the proposed strategy, which will include touch points with the WWG to get feedback from the WWG as strategies are developed. January to May 2025. The district will conduct various public workshops and public outreach, engagement, and meaningful input opportunities. September 2025. The proposed final strategy will be presented for board consideration. Note that this proposed timeline is subject to change pending board comments. Next slide, please. Group expectations. Why are we convening this group? In accordance with AB 423 and direction by the governing board. Why do we need this group's help? The issues involved with reducing emissions attributed to warehousing activities are complex. By providing their input, WWG participants, who have varied areas of knowledge and expertise, can assist the district's efforts in addressing these issues. Where are we going with this effort? To develop potential regulatory and non-regulatory strategies to reduce air pollution from these indirect sources. Next slide, please. Staff today is seeking input on WWG schedule and process. Here are some specific questions for discussion. What topics should be addressed in the working groups and in what order? What metrics should each group consider to determine progress? And what voluntary measures should be explored? Next slide, please. Starting in October, staff will conduct public outreach, engagement, and meaningful input opportunities with the following. AB 617 Portside and International Border Steering Committees, environmental justice communities impacted in East and North County, San Diego District Environmental Justice Partnership, Industrial Environmental Association, and possible affected warehouse owners and operators. These public outreach opportunities will occur on an ongoing basis throughout the development process. Also in October, staff will send out Gov Delivery and social media announcements to announce the kickoff warehouse working group meeting. July through December 2024. Announcements via Gov Delivery website with CEQA and milestones are as needed. January through May 2025. Draft strategy will be developed and released for public workshops and comments. October 2025 and beyond. Public outreach will continue to assist with strategy implementation. I will now turn the presentation over to Nick, who will talk about potential meeting topics and meeting format. Nick?
Thank you, Andy. The following are potential topic areas that be discussed at the first WWG meetings. For November, we'd be looking at discussing governing board direction and feedback, warehouse inventory, including small, under-resourced communities. Including small warehouses, under-resourced communities, proximity to sensitive receptors, and prioritization. An overview of the district's legal authority, possible non-regulatory strategies, including incentives, new concepts, and concept for a district truck trip survey. For December, we'd be looking to discuss the California Air Resources Board Advanced Clean Fleets Rule, how it applies, and other CARB regulations apply and will impact any indirect source rulemaking. Possible regulatory strategies, including APCD rules for city ordinances or something similar. Again, possible non-regulatory strategies. And finally, a possible cargo reservation system concept at the OTMA support. Next slide, please. The proposed format for future working group meetings is as follows. We're looking at 2-hour sessions that will include a staff presentation, as well as conference call-in and email access. We're hoping to do a roundtable format that facilitates open dialogue between staff, stakeholders, and interested parties. Participants will be panelists with video and microphone capabilities to discuss openly. Meeting agenda and presentation slides are to be posted no later than 48 hours in advance of the meeting. And meeting recordings will be available on the district's YouTube page, including this meeting today. Next slide, please. So here is the next set of polls. We'll see how this one goes, but we're going to give it a try. So the first question we have there's actually two questions that we're hoping to get answered with this. The first is, for your particular schedule, what days would you generally prefer regular monthly WWG meetings to be? We have each day of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. And then the second question would be, again, for your particular schedule, what time frame would you generally prefer the regular monthly WWG meetings to be held? When we have a couple of categories to respond to, we can either do mornings, which would generally be 9 to 11, over a lunch hour, which would be between 11 and 1, afternoons, which would be between 1 and 3, late afternoons, which would be generally 4 to 6, and then evenings, which would generally be 5 to 7 p.m. So we'll go ahead and bring up the poll, and we'll see how this one goes. So it looks like this is the first one in relation to the first question. So this is just for the day of the week that would work best. And again, these responses are anonymous, so we're just trying to get a sense for, as we're going to be selecting pretty much one time every month to have these meetings, a set time, so that we can get it on everybody's calendar. We're looking for, some boundaries to kind of make sure we're selecting the right days and times that agree with most people. So we'll go ahead and give that a few extra seconds. Again, if you haven't responded, go ahead and put your general availability. Again, every week is different, understand. Just trying to get a sense for what everybody's availability is. Okay, we'll go ahead and end that poll. And it looks like it looks like Monday is the best option for a little over half the group, followed by Wednesday. And again, about half the group is generally available on Wednesdays. Tuesday and Thursday, about 30 to 40% of the group is available on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then Friday, which I think is to be expected, probably was generally not available, is the last one. So that is helpful. So thank you for responding to that particular poll. And then I think we can go ahead and bring up the next poll if you can, Janet. There we go. Again, I'll read it once more. So for your schedule, what time frame would you generally prefer regular monthly WWG meetings? And again, this is just a general time frame we're looking for. Some meetings may be held at different times, depending on the topic, but we wanted to try and get one time that could work for everybody's calendar as best as possible. Okay, we'll give it another couple of seconds. If you haven't responded yet, go ahead and submit your response. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and close it. Okay, so it looks like the afternoon time period between 1 and 3 wow, about 77% of us are available generally in the afternoons between 1 and 3, so that's good. Followed by the lunch hour between 11 and 1, about 43% are available. Mornings between 9 and 11 is the next response at 37%. Late afternoons, 4 to 6, 26% of us are available. And then finally, evenings, 5 to 7 p.m. Is the last response at 6%. So thank you, everyone. That will help us kind of guide how we set up future meetings. So we really appreciate you responding to that. That will definitely help us out. Next slide, please. So additional resources can be found on the district's website, including the report entitled Options and Considerations for Reducing Indirect Source Emissions at Warehouses, Distribution Centers, and Ports. A summary of the report was presented at the June Governing Board meeting, which may be viewed on the district's YouTube page. The WWG website includes other resources such as meeting agenda, presentation slides, and a fact sheet. The district's Gov Delivery email subscription service will be used to notify WWG participants and other interested stakeholders about the WWG meeting updates. If you are not currently receiving these Gov Delivery emails, please sign up using the link provided and select Warehouse Working Group Meeting Updates under Subscription Topics. You may also request to have your email address added to the Gov Delivery subscription by contacting district staff. Next slide, please. So the first kickoff WWG meeting is tentatively planned for the weeks of November 6th or the 13th. These dates are being proposed in consideration of the Thanksgiving holiday. A doodle poll will be sent via email following today's meeting with the proposed dates and times. Please submit your preferences on the poll to help facilitate scheduling of the kickoff meeting. And we'll certainly be incorporating the feedback you gave us today within that poll as well. Next slide, please. Here is staff contact information. This information is also listed on the district's rules webpage. Again, Randy Constellation and myself, we're our contact information. Feel free to contact us. And at this point, this concludes the presentation, but we'd now like to open up the meeting to any questions or comments from you. We've talked a lot here, but we want to hear from you now. And so please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you have a question or comment, you can also dial *9 if you're on the phone. You may also post your question or comment using the chat button. I think it says Q&A feature here, but we're going to be using the chat button today. And we just ask that you please self-regulate your time and if possible, limit your question or comment to 3 minutes per speaker to accommodate everybody. We have about 40 people in the room. We do have about an hour left in the meeting, so we have plenty of time, but just want to be mindful of other people's time. And we do envision at future WWG meetings, once they kick off, that we would accommodate, about 10 or 15 minutes per meeting to allow any public non-agenda items. So just wanted to make sure people were aware of that as well. Next slide, please. And so we're just bringing this particular slide that was earlier in the presentation up as a way to kind of guide our discussions a little bit. We're certainly welcome to hear whatever comments you have, but we wanted to also bring up these particular questions as well, which is what we're trying to get some feedback on today as well. So I will go ahead and start with the first person who is on my screen, who has their hand up, and I think it's Alejandra Mireille Turan.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I wanted to thank you for including the Otay Mesa cargo reservation system in your as a topic in December. My comment in terms of topics that should be addressed, I really think that the border community should be, in a way, handled in a subgroup, if possible, because I really think that whatever comes out of this group, most likely, I just don't think it's a whole countywide effort should be applied at the border. And my apologies to the people from CAR, but the last thing we want is what happened with the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation, where you do a statewide measure without understanding the border versus trying to come up with unique ideas that will really tackle the reduction of pollution while supporting supply chains, which I really think can be done. So thank you for including that. And I wanted to see if we could take it a step further to doing a subgroup on the border as to maybe a process specifically for the border that I think should be different from a countywide proposal. And my quick question is, in terms of the public outreach, I noticed what you put on that slide, and I wasn't clear as to how are you actually reaching out to warehouses, because I saw a couple of the steering committees, which I know none of the warehouses participate. I mean, certainly not on the international border one. It's more of a community group versus a business group. So I just wanted a little bit of feedback as to the outreach to warehouses. Thank you.
Sure, I can go ahead and attempt to answer the question on how we're reaching out to warehouses. So I think we are hoping to use a lot of our group's knowledge in trying to reach out to various warehouse stakeholders. We do have some contact information for some warehouses that happen to have permits with APCD. That would not be every single warehouse in the county, certainly, but some certainly do. So we've been attempting to contact some warehouses that do have APCD permits. And then we're also looking to go through the various trade associations that may have better contacts with warehouse owners and operators. So that can certainly be improved, and it's kind of a work in progress. But at the moment, that's who we've been working with and trying to reach out. We would certainly appreciate any and all help in trying to spread the word to those folks, either to participate in these upcoming working group sessions, so that we can get as many of those folks into the room as possible. And your comment regarding the border subgroup, thank you for the comment. We'll go ahead and think about that as things move ahead. I see Jack Monger's hand up.
Thanks, Nick. Just a question I wanted to offer is something I hope we could spend some time on is as I think back to the original language in AB 423, the request was, or the requirement was that the district undergo an analysis basically in terms of whether or not an ISR could be effective, was appropriate or necessary, or whatever the case may be. And I think as part of answering that question, because I believe many of our folks around San Diego County believe that we've skipped over that part of the analysis and have moved right into an ISR is definitely necessary and definitely beneficial, and here's what we're going to do. I think it would be really helpful to spend some time understanding exactly what the contribution to the region's emissions, particularly DPM, are a result of these warehouses. And I imagine they vary quite a bit from they're all over the county. I'd really like to know what impact is coming from the warehouses that are in the portside community. As is the case with Maritza, I sit on that steering committee also, and I'd like to get a sense of, for the warehouses that are on that map, and it was kind of impossible to really, I'd really like to see a blown up version of that so we could look and see what warehouses we're looking at, what sort of truck traffic is really being generated. Is it 1 or 2 trucks a day? Is it 100 trucks a day? What is it? And so we can understand each of the impact from each of those facilities. And the reason that's relevant is that we may find in this process that the trucks generated by warehouses in some areas are actually less than the trucks that are generated by the standard commercial facilities in those areas. As I think about the commercial district down in Barrio Logan, that includes, the shopping center, Ryan Brothers Coffee, all of that. I'm just wondering how much truck traffic is generated by that operation, those operations versus what may be generated by a nearby warehouse. And if we go marching off, just assuming that the warehouse is the real problem and responsible for a majority of the problem, then we're going to be attacking the wrong source. And I would feel much more confident knowing exactly which the sources are that we really need to worry about because of the magnitude of their emissions and contribution, and then approach addressing the problem that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Jack, understood. That's a good comment. And I think we are going to be getting into, once this working group kicks off, we are going to be exploring a lot more of that background information and hopefully adding to that information, some of which you have already seen at past groups, past meetings, to better explore the information and that's out there to see what we can find, and to get to your point of, are warehouses the problem, or are there other factors involved, especially in some of these more impacted neighborhoods?
Thanks, Nick.
And Nick, this is Mike. If I just may add, Jack, you do bring up a good point about, the AB 423 language and, specifically the way that language was worded. I think the term they use in there is consider, right? The air district must consider an indirect source rule. And I think that's part of what this process is. When we went to our board back in June and gave them an update on our research at the time, essentially what we said was, look, it's potentially feasible for us to implement a rule similar to the rule that was done in South Coast, right? That's sort of the message that we were trying to convey at that point in time. And we got some feedback from our board that said, hey, look, we appreciate that, but we want to look at some other factors, part of which is trying to answer the question that you just posed as well, Jack. Like how do we know, what the emission sources are? Can we try to get a better handle on specifically what kind of truck trips are associated with what types of facilities? And that's not an easy question to answer, right? And so that's part of what the intent of our staff recommendation at that time in forming this working group was what we hope to try to achieve is, talking with this group of folks, thinking about some different alternatives and methods at which how we can try to refine those truck trip estimates to get a better picture of what things look like. So that's definitely one of the outcomes that we're hoping for out of these discussions. So appreciate the input on that.
Yeah, and you're right. It was considered, and that to me includes all those things I was kind of talking about. But you've got the exact right language. So thanks, Mike.
Great. I want to read a comment that was submitted in the chat by Eric Ruvold, and I'll just kind of read it verbatim. Interested, heads up. One issue will be how APCD decides to treat flex space that was built to accommodate warehouses or manufacturing, or both. Indeed, the vast majority of industrial space was built that way. In addition, some of that or lot has minimal truck traffic, while others, such as the last mile delivery, I'm assuming, have a lot. This feels like the trickiest issue. Eric, is there anything you wanted to add to that comment, or did I catch
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it dovetails with what Jax really says. And so, I think one thing which you guys really want to think about is, what do you mean by warehouse? And maybe not all warehouses are, just like the other. And so there's going to be, I think, to craft a rule that makes sense is going to require staff, with, input from everybody, to really think about what could be a workable rule. And again, the vast majority of industrial space constructed over, say, the last 2 decades or more in San Diego County have been shells with 20-foot high ceilings, truck bays, but some of it is built out for, warehouse with minimal truck traffic. Some of it's built out, over the last 10 years has been used truck traffic, lots of last mile distribution. So lots of truck traffic, and others has been built out as manufacturing space, which has, its own APCD requirements and licensing. And yet on the zoning and the building permit, it's all the same stuff. So I think that's going to be something for the district and for staff to really grapple with and think through, how do I identify this?
Certainly, that's a great comment, and that is going to be a challenge, I think, for us and what we've been exploring. And to be honest, I think it was a challenge for the Air Quality Management District as well, up in the LA area. LA area, to try and endeavor and figure out what those spaces are. So that is certainly something we're going to have to explore further as this process develops. And if there is any resources or any information that could be available, we're certainly all ears on that.
But I guess, Nick, the thing is though, I think you guys, obviously you have to look to other districts and what, is done up in LA, but, I think that you conceptually need to step back maybe and think through the use of the space today is not the same as it may be in a few years and may not be the same a few years after that. So what mechanism do you have, truck trips or associated truck trips feels like actually the best mechanism so you're able to capture that? Because I don't know how you would begin that unless you do sort of some blanket swath of calling everything built that's flex space warehouse. And I don't know if that's, both in the spirit of the legislation nor legally defensible if somebody says, I'm using it for manufacturing and I've got a 15-year lease and that's all I do with it. You already regulate me.
Understood. No, that's a great comment, Eric. We'll definitely consider that as this moves ahead. I want to also, I'm looking at the chat right now. I think Alejandra had a follow-up to her in relation to the groups we could reach out to, I believe, which includes the San Diego Brokers Association. I'm sorry, Custom Brokers Association. So that is certainly a group we can contact if we haven't already. So thank you, Alejandra. And then Maritza said she had to hop off, but is looking ahead to future meetings. I wanted to again go back to some of these questions, seeing that I don't see anybody with a hand up raised at the moment. But I just wanted to again touch on the questions that are on the slide. What topics would you be interested in seeing? What order? What metrics should be considered to determine progress? We've already heard a little bit of that, but we certainly welcome more feedback. And then voluntary measures that should be explored. These are, again, things we're hoping to get some feedback on today. I see Alejandra's hand raised again. Go ahead, Alejandra.
Yes, and I'm certainly no expert in LEED certifications, but for example, in terms of voluntary measures, I guess if some warehouses have gone out of their way to get a certain LEED certification, you may want to consider, for example, waiving from this because they already did so much. I mean, those are I think the type of things that we should explore and try to make this the less costly possible for you guys and for the warehouse. Does that make sense or not?
Yes, sorry, that does make sense. Thank you. That's an interesting idea. We'll definitely think about that. Any other feedback?
Nick, if I may,
sure.
Just in terms of kind of that voluntary measures thing, and I appreciate that thought from Alejandra as well. One of the things that the district has at its disposal in terms of tools to potentially address that is incentive fees and incentive dollars, right, that we get through CARB. That certainly is an area that we've been thinking about as potential opportunities to try to identify whether that's specific carve outs for electrical infrastructure, charging infrastructure at or near warehouses or things of that nature. So just kind of wanted to tee that up as an idea for people to think about when we're talking about voluntary measures. That definitely we envision that including something along the lines of, how can we best utilize the grant funding that we get to help try to advance the ball on these cleaner technologies.
Thank you, Mike. Let's see. I think Craig Benedetto's hand might have been raised before Jack's, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think, go ahead.
You're right.
Thanks, Nick. I always defer to Jack, but I will go ahead and just go since I see he went back on mute. I saw, at least on the agenda for the second meeting, the idea of doing regulatory and non-regulatory together, and it's kind of to the point we were just talking about. It seems like we should focus a session on the non-regulatory to help inform us on, and I'm going to, at least in my mind, think about non-regulatory as incentive-based programs, things like that, to see how far we can get, and then have a separate session on the regulatory side, because I think they're different and separate, and I don't necessarily know that mixing the two makes the most sense. And then the last comment I'll make, and I know we want to be productive in these sessions, and I'm a big believer in that, so don't take this the wrong way. I don't really mean this to be snarky, but I'm going to need some help with my folks, and I'm sure some of the other folks that represent the business community on this call will need the same. When we're talking about such a low percentage of impact, we're going to need some help explaining why we're spending so much time and effort, given the economic consequences of an ISR, time and effort on this. And I just want to point that out, not to be snarky, but like, I'm going to have to go explain this to folks, hoping, the end result is productive for us all. We can all get around it. But if it's not, there's going to have to be some explanation as to just why we're spending this much time and effort for such a small impact in terms of NOx. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Craig. Thank you for the comments. Jack?
Thanks, Nick. And it's very similar to Craig's comment. My suggestion with regard to metrics that we might consider, and I want to begin by saying I really appreciated the fact that you all, ABCD staff, came out in that first staff report and said that the return on investment for an ISR in San Diego was probably going to be very, very low, if not the lowest of anything that we have done. Yet it was going to cost was going to be significant, as Craig was just noting. And I hope we keep that front and center in the discussion as we move down this road to look at what the cost of it is in terms of staff time, your time, everyone on this call's time, what the benefits are in terms of emission reduction versus the other alternatives that you all have, and that our partnership between the regulatory community and the business community have to really see some valued and effective emission reductions. So I appreciated that you all brought that on the staff report. I thought that was a key point. I think it still is a key point. And so I hope as we move through this, we get a better idea of where the ISR really falls in San Diego in terms of having the relative impact that it could have versus anything else we could do and spend money on.
Great. Thank you, Jack. I see Mike. Did you want to say something about that, Mike?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jack and Craig, and I appreciate that feedback. And I think, I guess what I would say, just equally, we need to consider kind of those proximal impacts, right? And kind of, what public health impacts might be associated for folks that are living in close proximity to these facilities. And I think, I can't speak for the board, obviously, but I think that was part of their intent in directing us to look at, these under-resourced communities and kind of what the impacts are from operations in those areas. And so, finding that right balance of how can we do this in a cost-effective manner that gets the reductions we need from the areas we need, while also balancing, the important public health components and how we can address those. That's part of the challenge of what we're trying to accomplish, right? And that is by no means going to be an easy balancing act to walk, but I think that is important for us to consider in terms of, looking at it from both of those angles, right? What are the costs, what's the cost effectiveness versus what are the public health benefits associated with, whatever strategy we come up with, regulatory, non-regulatory, some mix of the two, whatever it is, just so that you know, we can thread that needle to the best of our abilities.
Thanks, Mike. I wanted to go back to the chat, and then I see Nicholas Powell's hand up, so I'll go get to him right after reading some of the questions in the chat that have been there for a little bit. So I see Dr. Maddie Swain said, can you elaborate any further on the current state of warehouse inventory efforts? We saw the map of warehouse locations. How much is known about each of the warehouses on the map? Or perhaps this is the topic for another meeting. So I think at this point, I would probably direct everybody to the indirect source report that we put out for our June governing board meeting. If they want some additional information that's been publicly released at this point, we do have some information in that report, and I'm hoping one of my colleagues at APCD can drop a link into the chat of that report. It's up on our website. And you can take a look at some of the information we've shared about warehouses to date in that. I think as part of this process in this warehouse working group, we'll probably be diving deeper into that data. And certainly as we teed up as one of the first topics in the initial meetings, once we get kicked off, we'll be looking at and exploring more into that warehouse and distribution center inventory, and kind of going back to what Eric said, kind of maybe exploring what are those facilities being used as, if we have that information, that sort of thing. So I think that is going to be a topic for a future meeting, but there is some information out there already that you can explore into that report that we had in June. Hopefully that answers your question, Doctor. I see Sharon Cloward had a comment also saying she agrees. I think we need to understand various levels of warehouses as they are not all used for the same purposes. So that's going back to that comment, I believe, from Eric and Jack of trying to figure out, you know, what are these facilities being used for? Are they being used for a number of different things? Is it only warehouse space, or is it also manufacturing space? Trying to get at that question. I see, actually, I'm not sure, Nicholas Pello, I just want to check before we going on to the next person to see if you still wanted to speak, or.
Yeah, you know, it was just in response to some of the comments made and building off of what Mike Watt was talking about earlier. I think, you know, we know there are specific communities in San Diego County that kind of bear the brunt of diesel particulate pollution. One of those being the port side. We have a concentration of warehouses in our community, and there's specific goals set out to reduce DPM pollution in those neighborhoods. And so for the second question, where it asks about specific metrics that we should be using to determine progress, you know, I think we have a monitoring network in the port side. If we can see some clear reduction in DPM levels in the neighborhood, I think that's a foolproof way of kind of determining if, you know, this ISR effort is working or not.
Great, thank you, Nicholas. I see Craig Benedetto's hand up. Craig?
Yes, thanks, Nick. I was just going to ask a question about, I know we're going to talk in one of the sessions about, you know, the state and what they're doing to address truck emissions. Are we also going to have a session that talks about some of the building code standards and what is happening there in that space as well, like Title 24 and the other things that are happening in the built space? I mean, there's the truckers, but I know at least in the South Coast AQMD, there is some impact to the physical side, the warehouse side, industrial side of the building. And a lot of that is covered by Title 24 when you're talking about efficiencies and things like that. Will that be accomplished in one of our sessions?
It certainly can. It's not something that we've expressly identified yet, but that can certainly be something we could discuss at one of those upcoming meetings. Sure. Thank you for the suggestion. I see Eric also submitted another comment. To be precise, there are warehouses which have almost no truck traffic, like a biomanufacturer who has 20,000 different items and sends them out in small batches. That's an interesting comment. Interesting situation there that you bring up. Let's see. Jack, I see your hand up again.
All right, and I promise not to have any more comments after this one, but I wanted to follow on Nicholas's comment because I thought he raised an interesting challenge for us, and that is to understand from the monitoring data that we do have collected in, for example, the Portside community, whether or not the emissions are coming from the freeway or if they're coming from truck traffic in the community or at the port or what. I know at one time, I think a couple of years ago, that question was put to CARB if they had the ability to differentiate those emission sources. At the time, I thought the answer was no, they did not. But if we were going to be able to measure any effectiveness of an ISR, we would need to be able to distinguish those emissions that were occurring. We already know from data that's been collected by the mobile source program or the mobile sampling program that the district did a couple of years ago, that there's an enormous percentage of the emissions. I'm talking, I mean, it's just overwhelming that is occurring along Interstate 5. And so I think it would be very helpful to us to be able to distinguish and differentiate some of those sources in the future for to really understand how effective the program is.
Thank you, Jack.
Sure.
Alejandro.
Yes, I just want to say we share the similar concerns with what Jack's just expressed, because I believe also, like on the map I just saw, that DPM did not seem to be so high in O-type, but certainly very high in San Isidro, which also leads me to believe that the pollution is really coming from the vehicles in San Isidro and not the trucks in Otay Mesa, although obviously we all know that truck traffic is definitely polluting. My comment here is, are we or are you going to do some projections on and like sort of overlay them on this timeline on the ACF fleet regulation? Because I know, and I'm assuming they have some predictive models of how pollution will be reduced with those very aggressive timelines that they have. So, because I think if, I mean, on the monitoring side, I think it's a good idea, but I think we'll also see that, I mean, we expect a lot of benefits pollution-wise from the ACF. So I think that would be an interesting thing to overlay, and especially with the timeline that we have and their timeline. And just also considering that the I guess our weather, we're just getting warmer. There are some peaker plants in Otay Mesa that are powered up, obviously, when we need more energy. So that is something that we should also measure. I mean, if we're getting more polluted because of those, and it's really not because of truck traffic, I think it is important to understand the different polluting sources. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alejandra. To kind of respond to that question on modeling, you know, we'll have to speak and we'll have to kind of discuss that a little bit more internally, if that's going to be something we have the capacity to do, or if we wanted to kind of go down a modeling pathway, you know, what could we take advantage of in terms of other agencies' resources to do that. I think we are planning to certainly get into some of the nuts and bolts of what the Advanced Clean Fleet rule and other CARB regulations are supposed to do as they get further developed over time, and try to see how that works with any potential indirect source rulemaking or non-regulatory approach. That is certainly on our list of to-do items as part of this group. Whether or not we have the capacity to do a modeling exercise along with that, we'll have to see what can be done with that. Understandably, modeling exercises aren't cheap, and whether we have the resources to do it is kind of a question in my head. But we'll certainly take that back and see if that's something that we could explore over time.
Thank you, Nick. And not just that, but the truck and bus rule as well. We all know that a lot more, trucks, you know more about this than I do, are using the natural gas now. And I think that's why we also may be seeing some reductions in pollution, but I also think that should be considered.
Sure. Thank you for the comment. Let's see, AJ Estrada.
Hi, thank you so much. I just want to thank Nicholas for his comments earlier. As a resident of West Chula Vista, and with family with a long history in Barrio Logan, I understand personally the impacts of pollution along that corridor. I look forward to participating in this work in this stakeholder group, and appreciate you all for hosting this orientation and move forward as the advocate for communities. The building trades, at the front of our minds is the safety of our workers, and that extends to the communities we live in. So I'm excited to be here.
Great, thank you for the comment. Appreciate you being here. I see Janet on our staff, she posted a link to the board packet. So that was our June 2023 board packet, which includes the board letter that the governing board considered, and as well as it should be an attachment to that board packet, which is the report that we presented to the board that allowed them to kind of get a little bit of understanding of what on this topic and to be able to decide to form this working group. So if you're looking for more information, that's going to be included in that link that's in the chat. And I see some people are starting to probably have to jump off. So I just want to make sure that everybody has, are there any other questions, feedback, comments at this time? I see Alejandro Amador.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say, just kind of close off that no matter if the impact might feel small regionally, I think those communities like mine, San Isidro, the Otay Mesa, will see a change. So let's not disregard the impact that this rule could have in specific communities. Every year, San Isidro, Otay Mesa, we measure like particulate matter over 2 cubic micrograms per meter cube. That I'm not sure what the units are, but we're over the 12 federal limit. So little by little we can probably meet that standard at least. So let's just not forget that little by little we can create a big impact.
Great comment. Thank you, Alejandro. I see an additional comment, it looks like coming in from Sterling. Power generation facilities at the border, of which there are 4, are all natural gas fueled with both oxidation and SCR catalytic emissions controls. Particulate emissions are actually cleaner than the ambient air due to multi-stage air filtration. Interesting. Are there any comments, any other folks that would like to raise their hand? Certainly, this is not going to be the end of this discussion. This is only the beginning. It isn't technically even it hasn't even technically kicked off yet. So again, we wanted to convene this session as kind of a orientation of sorts to folks that will more than likely be participating in future meetings as this topic kicks off. And as Mike mentioned, we're going to be having some more robust discussions about legal district authority and other things that are going to be coming down the pipeline, but we needed to kind of set a baseline understanding since some folks in the room have not participated in this process to date. So again, that was kind of the purpose of today's meeting, but we will be getting into more thorough and deep discussions on some of the topics that you all have brought up today, as well as the ones we put into the presentation before. So I just want to give one more chance for any last minute feedback, comments, questions. If not, and I see your comment there, Craig, appreciate that. We look forward to working with everybody as we get going here. Okay, well, I will go ahead and close the meetings. I appreciate everybody's time and effort and being here today in an hour and a half meeting. There'll be longer ones moving forward. Just be aware, but we'll be on the lookout for the doodle poll. Please respond to that when you get that, so we can set up that meeting for kickoff meeting in November. And then we'll hopefully be on a more set schedule as we proceed in the months ahead. I did want to just note that the presentation for today will be up on our website. Actually, it is up on our website, and you can download that at the Warehouse Working Group portion of the website. And we also send it by email, so check your email. There should have been a Warehouse Working Group email that was sent to, so it's also available through there. And I see Jenna just posted in the chat the link to the website, so I appreciate that. And thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. We'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank
Thanks,
you.